The morning air was thick with tension as Sarah Martinez stepped through the gates of Naval Special Warfare Command. At 26, she carried herself with quiet confidence, but the weight of 1,000 doubts pressed against her shoulders. Behind her, whispers followed like shadows. The other candidates barely acknowledged her presence, their eyes sliding past her as if she were invisible. "First female to attempt SEAL training in 3 years," one muttered to his buddy. "Wonder how long she'll last." Sarah had heard it all before. During her 8 years as a Navy rescue swimmer, she had pulled drowning sailors from stormy seas and jumped from helicopters into 20-foot waves. She had earned 3 commendations and the respect of every pilot she had worked with. But none of that seemed to matter here, where tradition ran deeper than the Pacific Ocean. The compound buzzed with activity as 180 hopeful candidates prepared for what would become the most grueling 6 months of their lives. Basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, known simply as BUD/S, had a reputation that made hardened Marines think twice. The statistics were brutal: only 20 to 30% would make it through. For women, the unofficial number was 0. Sarah understood the odds. She also understood that numbers had never defined her. Growing up in a small Texas town, she had been the girl who climbed the tallest trees and never backed down from a dare. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. When bullies picked on smaller kids at school, Sarah stepped in. When her high school swimming team needed someone to attempt an impossible relay record, Sarah volunteered. "You sure about this, Martinez?" Chief Petty Officer Reynolds asked as she signed her final paperwork. His weathered face showed neither encouragement nor discouragement, just professional curiosity. "This isn't rescue swimmer school. This is something else entirely." "I'm sure, Chief," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I've wanted this since I was 12 years old." Reynolds nodded slowly. He had been an instructor for 15 years and had seen every type of candidate imaginable. Cocky college athletes who crumbled at the first sign of real adversity. Quiet farm boys who possessed an inner strength that surprised everyone. Street-smart kids from tough neighborhoods who understood that pain was temporary but quitting lasted forever. Sarah was different, though. She carried herself like someone who had already been tested and found worthy. Her rescue swimmer record spoke for itself: 47 successful rescues, including a near-impossible helicopter extraction during Hurricane Maria when she had spent 6 hours in churning seas saving a family of 4 from their sinking yacht. The first week of BUD/S was designed to weed out the unprepared. Physical training began before dawn with a 4-mile run on the beach. Sarah kept pace with the middle of the pack, neither showing off nor struggling. She had learned long ago that endurance was more valuable than speed, especially when the real challenges lay ahead. In the chow hall, conversations stopped when she walked by. Some candidates stared openly, while others made pointed jokes about the Navy's new social experiment. Sarah ate her meals quietly, focusing on the nutrition her body would need rather than the hostility surrounding her. "Don't let them get to you," advised Marcus Thompson, a soft-spoken candidate from Alabama. He had approached her table during lunch, ignoring the disapproving looks from his peers. "Half of them won't make it past next week anyway." Marcus was right. By day 10, the class had already lost 30 candidates. Some quit during the endless hours of calisthenics. Others walked away when they realized that the cold Pacific Ocean would become their second home. A few were removed by instructors who recognized that physical limitations or mental brittleness would make the training dangerous. Sarah remained, methodically completing every exercise and evolution. During log PT, where teams of 6 carried 200-pound telephone poles through various drills, she anchored her team's efforts. Her teammates, initially skeptical about her strength, discovered that determination could compensate for size differences. The instructors watched her carefully. They had seen talented women attempt SEAL training before, only to be overwhelmed by the relentless physical demands or the psychological pressure of being the only female in an aggressively masculine environment. Some had quit within days. Others had pushed themselves to injury trying to prove they belonged. Sarah seemed different. She approached each challenge with calm focus, never complaining about the conditions or seeking special consideration. When candidates around her began to crack under pressure, she remained steady. During night training exercises, when exhaustion made simple tasks feel impossible, Sarah continued performing at her baseline level. "She's got something," observed Lieutenant Commander Hayes, the senior training officer. "Can't put my finger on it yet, but she's not like the others." The real test came during week 3, when the class faced their first major underwater evolution. Candidates had to swim 50 meters underwater while instructors tried to remove their masks and breathing apparatus. Panic was the enemy. Those who surfaced early were immediately dismissed from the program. Sarah watched as candidate after candidate emerged gasping and defeated. The pool deck became littered with dreams as strong men discovered that mental toughness underwater required a different kind of courage than they possessed on land. When her turn came, Sarah slipped into the water with the fluid grace of someone who had made the ocean her second home. The instructor immediately grabbed her mask, twisting it sideways and flooding it with chlorinated water. Next came the breathing apparatus, yanked from her mouth and tangled around her arms. Underwater, in the artificial twilight of the training pool, Sarah drew on 8 years of rescue swimmer experience. She had been in worse situations in the open ocean, where real lives hung in the balance. This was just training, just another evolution to complete. She freed her breathing equipment with practiced efficiency, cleared her mask without wasting precious oxygen, and continued swimming. The instructor increased his efforts, wrapping the hose around her neck and arms, but Sarah remained calm. She had been grabbed by panicked drowning victims before, people whose terror gave them supernatural strength. This was nothing new. When she surfaced at the far end of the pool, completing the evolution successfully, a stunned silence fell over the poolside observers. She had not just passed, she had done so with a composure that impressed even the instructors. "Outstanding," Chief Reynolds called out, though his expression remained neutral. "Martinez, you're secured." As Sarah climbed from the pool, she noticed something had changed. The whispers were different now, carrying notes of grudging respect rather than skepticism. A few candidates nodded approvingly, though most still kept their distance. That evening, Marcus approached her again during the brief free time before lights out. "That was impressive," he said. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone stay that calm underwater." "It's just training," Sarah replied, though she appreciated his acknowledgement. "The real ocean is much harder." Her words carried truth that most of her classmates could not fully understand. While they were experiencing the controlled stress of military training for the first time, Sarah had already faced life-and-death situations where failure meant watching people die. The instructors were tough and demanding, but they were not hurricanes or equipment failures or the crushing weight of responsibility that came with real rescue operations. By the end of the first month, the class had shrunk to 120 candidates. Sarah was still there, quiet and determined, neither the strongest nor the fastest but consistently reliable. The instructors had begun to notice that teams performed better when she was included, not because of any special leadership role but because her steady presence seemed to calm the inevitable pre-evolution nerves. "She's becoming a stabilizing influence," Lieutenant Commander Hayes noted during a weekly instructor meeting. "The other candidates are starting to look to her when things get difficult." This development concerned some of the old-school instructors who believed that SEAL training should be an individual crucible where only the strongest survived. But Hayes recognized leadership potential when he saw it, and leadership in the teams was not always about being the loudest or most aggressive person in the room. The first major milestone approached, Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep and maximum stress. It was the evolution that broke more candidates than all others combined, where physical exhaustion met psychological pressure in a perfect storm of human limitation. Sarah knew that Hell Week would determine not just whether she could continue in the program, but whether she truly belonged among the warrior elite she had dreamed of joining since childhood. The whispers would become shouts, the doubts would multiply, and every weakness would be exposed under the harsh lights of relentless scrutiny. But she also knew something that her critics did not: she had already survived her own version of hell, alone in stormy seas with lives depending on her strength and skill. This would be different, surrounded by teammates and instructors, with safety protocols and medical support standing by. For the first time since arriving at BUD/S, Sarah Martinez allowed herself a small smile. They thought fear would break her, but they had not yet realized what 8 years of saving lives had forged within her spirit. Hell Week arrived like a storm that had been building on the horizon for months. At precisely 2,300 hours on Sunday night, the air filled with the deafening sound of machine gun fire, artillery simulators, and instructors wielding megaphones like weapons of mass destruction. The candidates, jolted from their bunks, stumbled into chaos as smoke filled their barracks and the nightmare officially began. Sarah rolled from her rack with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from years of emergency calls taking over. Around her, candidates fumbled in the artificial fog, some panicking as disorientation set in immediately. She had experienced this before during storm rescues when visibility dropped to zero and only training could guide her actions. "Move, move, move," screamed Chief Instructor Williams, his voice cutting through the cacophony like a blade. "You have 60 seconds to be on the beach in full gear or you're gone." The mad scramble that followed separated the prepared from the pretenders instantly. Sarah grabbed her gear and moved with deliberate haste, avoiding the collisions and mistakes that claimed 3 candidates before they even reached the sand. By the time she hit the beach, her heart rate was elevated but controlled, her breathing steady despite the chaos. The next 5.5 days would test every limit the human body and mind possessed. Sleep would become a luxury measured in minutes. Food would be whatever they could grab between evolutions. Warm, dry clothing would become a memory as they lived in and out of the Pacific Ocean. The first night established the pattern, surf torture, where candidates linked arms and sat in the freezing ocean while waves crashed over them for hours. Many quit during these sessions, their bodies unable to handle the combination of hypothermia and exhaustion. Sarah drew on her rescue swimmer training, using breathing techniques to maintain core temperature and mental clarity. "You can quit anytime, Martinez." Instructor Davis yelled directly into her ear as another wave slammed into the line of shivering candidates. "Just ring the bell and this all stops. Hot coffee, warm shower, dry clothes." The brass bell mounted on a post near the beach had become the symbol of surrender. Throughout Hell Week, its mournful sound would mark the end of dreams as candidates decided they had reached their breaking point. Already, 6 men had wrung out during the first 12 hours. Sarah focused on the horizon, using a meditation technique her father had taught her during difficult times. Pain was temporary, he had said, but the strength found in overcoming it lasted forever. She had proven this during her toughest rescues, when exhaustion threatened to claim both rescuer and victim. The second day brought log PT to a new level of brutality. Teams of 6 carried 200-pound logs through the surf, up and down sand dunes, and through obstacle courses that seemed designed by someone with intimate knowledge of human suffering. Sarah's team initially struggled with coordination, but her steady coaching helped them find rhythm. "Keep the log level," she called out during a particularly difficult evolution. "We move together or we don't move at all." Her teammates, now down to 5 after one quit during the night, began following her lead despite the unofficial hierarchy that usually developed during team exercises. Marcus was still there, along with James Peterson from Wyoming, Tommy Lou from San Francisco, and Alex Rodriguez from Miami. They were an unlikely group, but Hell Week was forging bonds that would last lifetimes. The instructors noticed the team's improved performance and increased their scrutiny of Sarah. They had seen female candidates before who tried to lead through encouragement and cooperation, usually failing when the training demanded aggressive competition. But Sarah's approach was different. She led through competence and quiet strength rather than motivational speeches. By Wednesday, hallucinations began affecting the sleep-deprived candidates. Men stumbled through evolutions talking to people who were not there, seeing objects that existed only in their exhausted minds. 3 more candidates quit, unable to distinguish between reality and their fractured perceptions. Sarah experienced her own moments of confusion but had trained herself to recognize the symptoms. During Hurricane Maria, she had worked for 18 straight hours in conditions that would have broken most people. She knew how to push through mental fog and maintain operational effectiveness. The most challenging moment came during Wednesday night's boat races. Teams had to carry heavy rubber boats over their heads while running on the beach, then paddle them through rough surf to designated points offshore. The combination of weight, distance, and ocean conditions had historically broken more teams than any other evolution.
Sarah's team was struggling.
Peterson had developed a stress fracture in his foot but refused to quit. Lou was fighting hypothermia that left him shaking uncontrollably. Rodriguez had not eaten solid food in 24 hours, his stomach rejecting everything he tried to consume. "We're not going to make it," Peterson gasped as they lifted the boat for another carry.
"I can't feel my foot anymore."
The team wavered on the edge of collective collapse. Around them, other boats moved with better coordination, their teams intact and functional. Sarah realized that this moment would define not just their Hell Week but her entire future in the program. She stopped the team and gathered them in a tight circle, their boat resting on the sand while other teams continued past them.
The instructors watched carefully, ready to intervene if they detected quitting behavior.
"Listen to me," Sarah said, her voice calm but intense. "I've pulled 47 people from the ocean when they thought they were going to die.
Every single one of them wanted to quit fighting at some point.
But they didn't, because someone was there who believed they could make it." She looked each teammate in the eye.
"I believe you can make it. All of you. We don't have to be the fastest boat or the strongest team. We just have to finish together."
The speech was not inspirational in any traditional sense. There were no appeals to patriotism or brotherhood, no stirring calls to overcome impossible odds. Instead, Sarah offered something more valuable, competent leadership from someone who had already proven herself in conditions where failure meant death.
Peterson straightened despite his injury. Lou forced down some energy gel and nodded grimly.
Rodriguez wiped his mouth and shouldered his position on the boat. They lifted together and continued the evolution, not as the strongest team but as one that refused to break. The instructors exchanged glances. Chief Williams had been training SEALs for 12 years and had seen every type of leadership style imaginable. Authoritarian commanders who demanded obedience.
Charismatic motivators who inspired through personality. Technical experts who led through superior knowledge. Sarah represented something different, leadership through demonstrated competence and genuine care for her teammates.
She was not trying to prove she was stronger or tougher than the men around her. Instead, she was showing that effectiveness under pressure came from skill, preparation, and the wisdom to know when to push and when to support. Thursday brought the dreaded Around the World evolution, where teams had to paddle their boats completely around the Silver Strand, a grueling journey that took most teams 6 to 8 hours in rough ocean conditions.
The instructors followed in safety boats, watching for signs of hypothermia, injury, or complete exhaustion. Sarah's team launched into heavy surf that immediately soaked them with freezing Pacific water.
The boat bucked and rolled in confused seas, requiring constant coordination to maintain course and prevent capsizing. Other teams struggled with the conditions. 2 had already been pulled from the water after their boats flipped in the surf zone. Hours passed in a blur of paddle strokes, navigation decisions, and constant battle against fatigue. Sarah took turns steering and paddling, using her rescue swimmer experience to read water conditions and find the most efficient routes. Her teammates began to trust her judgment completely, following her directions without question. There, she pointed toward a calmer channel between 2 underwater rocks.
"We can cut inside and save 20 minutes." The shortcut was risky, requiring precise navigation through shallow water where hidden obstacles could tear the bottom from their boat.
But Sarah had identified similar passages during rescue operations, and her confidence convinced the team to trust her experience. They made the passage successfully, emerging into calmer water with a significant lead over several other teams. The instructors noted the tactical decision and Sarah's growing reputation as a waterman among her peers. As Thursday night approached, exhaustion reached critical levels. Candidates hallucinated conversations with family members, saw buildings and vehicles that did not exist, and struggled to remember basic instructions.
2 more men quit, unable to function in their compromised mental state.
Sarah fought her own battles with perception and memory. During one evolution, she found herself looking for her rescue swimmer partner before remembering she was in BUD/S, not on a Coast Guard helicopter. But her training kicked in automatically, and she continued performing her assigned tasks with mechanical precision. The final night brought the most feared evolution, Steel Pier, where candidates had to perform calisthenics on a concrete platform while instructors sprayed them with freezing water from fire hoses. The combination of exhaustion, hypothermia, and physical demands pushed everyone to their absolute limits. Sarah lay on the cold concrete doing push-ups while water hammered her back. Around her, candidates struggled to maintain form as their muscles cramped and their minds fragmented. The brass bell seemed to call to everyone, offering immediate relief from suffering that felt endless.
She thought about her father, who had endured months of jungle warfare in Vietnam.
She remembered her first rescue, a terrified child who had fallen from a pier in rough weather. She recalled every person she had pulled from the water, their grateful faces and second chances at life. When Friday afternoon finally arrived, marking the official end of Hell Week, only 63 candidates remained from the original 180. Sarah was among them, exhausted but intact, her uniform salt-stained and her body pushed to its limits but her spirit unbroken. Chief Williams called the survivors together for the traditional Hell Week completion speech. He looked at the bedraggled group of men and one woman who had proven themselves worthy of continuing the journey toward becoming Navy SEALs. "You have completed the most challenging 5.5 days in military training," he announced.
But Hell Week is not about surviving.
It's about proving that you can function as part of a team when everything goes wrong. His eyes found Sarah in the group.
"Some of you surprised us. Some of you surprised yourselves. All of you have earned the right to continue."
As the candidates dispersed to finally get real sleep and medical attention, several approached Sarah with newfound respect. Men who had ignored or doubted her now offered sincere congratulations and acknowledgement of her performance. Marcus, who had become her closest ally in the program, walked with her toward the medical station.
"You know what the instructors are saying about you?" he asked.
Sarah was too tired for conversation, but she looked at him with curiosity.
"They're saying you might be the real deal," Marcus continued. "Not because you're tough for a woman, but because you're tough, period. There's a difference."
As Sarah submitted to the mandatory medical examination, she reflected on the week that had just passed. They had thought fear would break her, that the combination of physical demands and psychological pressure would prove too much for someone who did not fit their traditional image of a warrior. Instead, she had discovered something about herself that even she had not fully understood. Her years as a rescue swimmer had not just prepared her for SEAL training, they had made her into exactly the type of operator the teams needed. Someone who remained calm under pressure, who could lead when leadership was needed, and who understood that true strength came from the ability to function when everything went wrong. Hell Week was over, but Sarah Martinez knew the real test was just beginning.
The weeks following Hell Week brought a different kind of challenge.
The remaining 63 candidates faced increasingly complex training that tested not just physical endurance but mental acuity, technical skill, and the ability to operate sophisticated equipment under stress. Sarah discovered that surviving Hell Week was only the entry fee, the real education was just beginning. Land warfare training introduced candidates to small unit tactics, weapons systems, and combat scenarios that would define their operational capabilities. Sarah found herself studying late into the night, memorizing technical manuals and practicing disassembly procedures for rifles, pistols, and automatic weapons. Her rescue swimmer background had given her familiarity with some equipment, but SEAL weapons were purpose-built for missions far different from saving lives. The shooting began at dawn each day on ranges that echoed with constant gunfire. Candidates learned to engage targets at distances ranging from close-quarters battle scenarios to precision shots at 800 meters. Sarah had grown up hunting with her father but had never experienced the intensive marksmanship training that SEALs required. Initially, she struggled with the transition from rescue operations to combat mindset. Her instincts had been trained to preserve life, to calculate risks based on saving people rather than engaging enemies.
The psychological shift proved more challenging than learning to shoot accurately. "Martinez,"
Instructor Thompson called out during a live-fire exercise.
"You're thinking like a lifeguard, not a warrior. Engage that target like it's trying to kill your teammates." The comment stunned because it was accurate.
Sarah had been approaching combat training with the same methodical caution that served her well during rescue operations. But SEALs needed the ability to make split-second decisions involving lethal force, to act decisively when violence was the only solution. That evening, she sought out Chief Reynolds, the instructor who had shown her the most professional respect throughout training. She found him cleaning weapons in the armory, his withered hands moving with practiced efficiency through disassembly and inspection procedures. "Chief, I need advice," Sarah said directly. "I'm having trouble with the mindset shift from rescue swimmer to operator." Reynolds looked up from the rifle he was cleaning. In his 15 years as an instructor, few candidates had ever admitted to psychological challenges so honestly. Most either pretended they had no problems or quit when the difficulties became overwhelming. "Rescue swimmers and SEALs have more in common than you think," he said thoughtfully. "Both require the ability to function in extreme conditions. Both demand split-second decision-making. Both involve putting yourself at risk for others." He reassembled the rifle with fluid motions, each component clicking into place with mechanical precision. "The difference is not in courage or commitment, Martinez. It's in the definition of protecting people. Sometimes the best way to save innocent lives is to eliminate the threats against them." His words resonated with experiences Sarah had never connected to potential combat operations. During Hurricane Maria, she had made aggressive decisions to save the family trapped on the yacht, including entering dangerous water conditions that rescue protocols normally forbade. She had accepted risk to herself in order to preserve the lives of others. Combat operations followed similar logic but, with different tools and targets. Instead of fighting weather and waves, SEALs fought human enemies who threatened innocent people. The fundamental mission remained protection, only the methods changed. The mental breakthrough transformed Sarah's performance in subsequent training. Her accuracy scores improved dramatically as she stopped second-guessing her instincts and began trusting the same decision-making processes that had served her during rescues. She learned to see enemy targets not as people to save but as obstacles preventing her from protecting those who needed her help. Diving training presented different challenges that played directly to Sarah's strengths. While other candidates struggled with underwater navigation and breathing apparatus management, she moved through aquatic evolutions with the confidence of someone who had spent years beneath the surface. The pool sessions progressed to open ocean dives in conditions that terrified landlocked candidates. Sarah found herself coaching teammates who had never experienced diving in surf, strong currents, or limited visibility. Her rescue swimmer experience made her the informal leader for all underwater operations. "Stay close to Martinez," became common advice among the candidates. "She knows what she's doing in the water." During one particularly challenging night dive, conditions deteriorated beyond the original training parameters. Heavy surf, near-zero visibility, and strong currents created a scenario that the instructors considered terminating for safety reasons. Sarah's team was tasked with navigating to specific coordinates underwater and placing simulated explosive charges on designated targets. Two other teams had already surfaced after becoming disoriented and separated in the murky water. The remaining teams were struggling with navigation errors and equipment malfunctions that threatened mission success. Sarah's team faced the same conditions but approached them with the systematic methodology she had developed during real-world rescue operations. "Listen to me," she told her teammates before they entered the water. "We're going to use buddy team navigation with constant communication. Nobody goes more than arm's length from their partner. We move slowly and deliberately, checking position every 50 meters." The technique worked perfectly. While other teams fought the conditions and made navigation errors that cost time and accuracy, Sarah's team moved methodically toward their objective. They completed the evolution successfully and were the only team to place all charges within acceptable parameters. Lieutenant Commander Hayes watched the evolution from a safety boat, noting how Sarah's leadership style had evolved since Hell Week. She no longer needed to give speeches or motivate through encouragement. Instead, she led through demonstrated expertise and tactical competence that earned automatic respect from her teammates. "She's becoming the operator we hoped she might be," he observed to Chief Williams. "Not trying to prove anything anymore, just getting the job done." The comment reflected a fundamental shift in how the instructors viewed Sarah's presence in the program. Initially, they had seen her as either a social experiment or a publicity stunt, someone whose inclusion was motivated by politics rather than operational necessity. Now they were beginning to understand that her unique background brought capabilities the teams actually needed. As training progressed into advanced demolitions and combat engineering, Sarah's methodical approach to learning complex procedures impressed instructors who were accustomed to candidates struggling with technical subjects. Her rescue swimmer training had required mastery of sophisticated equipment under stress, preparation that translated directly to military explosives and sabotage techniques. The psychological evaluations that accompanied advanced training revealed interesting patterns in how Sarah processed stress compared to her male counterparts. Where other candidates showed increasing anxiety levels as training intensified, Sarah remained remarkably stable. Her stress responses were those of someone who had already been tested in life and death situations. Dr. Elizabeth Monroe, the program psychologist, noted this pattern in her weekly reports. Subject demonstrates exceptional stress tolerance and decision-making stability under pressure. Her psychological profile suggests someone who has already integrated high-stress experiences into her baseline functioning. The observation aligned with what instructors were seeing in tactical exercises. While other candidates sometimes froze or made impulsive decisions when scenarios became chaotic, Sarah processed information calmly and responded with appropriate actions. She had learned to function in crisis mode during real emergencies. Simulated combat scenarios felt manageable by comparison. Combat casualty care training highlighted another area where Sarah's background provided unexpected advantages. While other candidates learned medical procedures for the first time, she already understood advanced trauma care from her rescue swimmer training. She had treated hypothermia, drowning victims, and serious injuries under field conditions. During scenario-based training, Sarah became the informal medical specialist for her team. She could establish airways, treat shock, and manage bleeding with the competence of a trained paramedic. Her teammates began to trust her medical judgment completely, knowing that serious injuries would be handled properly under her care.
Martinez has the best medical skills in the class, observed Hospital Corpsman Martinez during a training evaluation. Her trauma care is already at operational level. Most candidates need months of additional training to reach her current capability. The combination of water expertise, stress tolerance, and medical skills was creating a candidate profile that impressed even skeptical instructors. Sarah was not just surviving SEAL training, she was demonstrating capabilities that would make her valuable in actual operational teams. But the most significant test still lay ahead. Advanced tactical training would require integration of all skills learned so far into complex scenarios that simulated real-world missions. Sarah would need to prove that her individual competencies could translate into effective team performance under the most challenging conditions the training program could create. The whispers had changed completely now. Instead of questioning whether she belonged, candidates and instructors alike were beginning to recognize that Sarah brought unique strengths to every evolution. Her teammates sought her advice on underwater operations. Instructors used her performance as an example for struggling candidates. "Watch how Martinez approaches this," became a common teaching point. She reads the conditions, makes a plan, and executes methodically. That's how professionals operate. As the class moved toward graduation, only 38 candidates remained from the original 180. Sarah was not just among them, she had become one of the standout performers whose capabilities were recognized by everyone in the program. Chief Williams found himself revising assumptions he had held for his entire career. In his experience, successful SEAL candidates fit certain patterns: aggressive athletes who could push through any physical challenge, natural warriors who thrived on competition and combat, technically gifted individuals who mastered complex equipment quickly. Sarah fit none of those traditional patterns yet consistently performed at the highest levels. She was not the strongest or fastest candidate, but she was arguably the most competent. Her quiet professionalism and genuine expertise had earned respect that no amount of physical prowess could generate. The final phase of training would determine whether her unique combination of skills could translate into the type of operator that SEAL teams needed in the modern era. The stakes were higher now, not just for Sarah but for the program itself. Her success or failure would influence future policies about women in special operations roles. But Sarah was no longer thinking about making history or breaking barriers.
She was focused on becoming the best operator she could be, using every skill and experience she had accumulated to earn her place among the warriors she had dreamed of joining since childhood. They had thought fear would break her, but Sarah Martinez had already faced her deepest fears in the stormy waters of real rescues. Now she was ready to discover what lay beyond fear, the calm confidence that came from knowing she belonged exactly where she was. The final exercise arrived with the weight of 6 months of preparation behind it. Called Warrior Exercise, the culminating event would test every skill the remaining 38 candidates had learned in a realistic mission scenario that lasted 72 hours. Success meant graduation and assignment to a SEAL team. Failure meant returning to the regular Navy with the knowledge that they had come within sight of their goal but could not cross the finish line. Sarah checked her gear for the final time as her 8-person squad prepared for insertion into the training area. They had been tasked with a complex mission: infiltrate enemy territory, conduct reconnaissance on a high-value target, eliminate specific threats, and extract successfully while avoiding capture or detection. The exercise would combine underwater infiltration, land navigation, small unit tactics, marksmanship, and decision-making under pressure. Marcus had been assigned to her squad, along with 6 other candidates who had proven themselves throughout training. James Peterson, whose stress fracture had healed completely. Tommy Liu, who had overcome his hypothermia struggles and become one of the strongest swimmers in the class. Alex Rodriguez, whose stomach problems had resolved once he adjusted to the physical demands. The team also included 3 newer faces: David Chen from Oregon, whose technical expertise with communications equipment had impressed instructors. Mike Sullivan from Boston, a former college wrestler whose quiet intensity masked exceptional tactical intelligence. Robert Kane from Montana, whose marksmanship scores had topped the class consistently. Remember, this is not individual evaluation, Chief Williams briefed the squads before insertion. You succeed or fail as teams. Leadership will be evaluated, but so will followership. Every decision you make affects your teammates' chances of success. Sarah understood the implications. The exercise was designed to test whether candidates could function as integrated team members rather than individual performers. Her unique background and growing reputation created both opportunities and pressure. Teammates would look to her for guidance in her areas of expertise, but she would also need to follow others when their skills were required. The mission began at sunset with underwater infiltration from a submarine positioned 3 miles offshore. Sarah's team slipped into the dark Pacific carrying sealed weapons and equipment while breathing from scuba tanks that would provide just enough air to reach their insertion point. They had rehearsed the approach dozens of times, but real ocean conditions added variables that no training evolution could replicate. Strong currents immediately challenged their navigation. The team found themselves fighting a drift that threatened to push them off course toward rocky shoreline that would make landing impossible. Sarah recognized the current pattern from her rescue swimmer experience and signaled for a course correction that would compensate for the drift. Chen, who had been designated team leader for the infiltration phase, accepted her navigation recommendation without hesitation. The team adjusted their approach and reached the designated beach within acceptable parameters. They had already learned to use each other's expertise rather than allowing ego or formal leadership structures to override tactical necessity. The beach landing required careful timing to avoid detection by opposing forces played by advanced students and instructors. Sarah led the team through the surf zone, using her water skills to guide them between patrol patterns she had observed during the approach. They reached dry land without triggering any of the sensors or observers that would have compromised the mission immediately. Phase 2 involved 20 kilometers of overland movement to reach the reconnaissance objective. The terrain included dense forest, steep hillsides, and open areas where concealment was difficult. Peterson took leadership for this phase, his hunting background and navigation skills making him the natural choice for wilderness movement. Sarah found herself in an unfamiliar role, following someone else's lead through terrain where her expertise was limited. The psychological adjustment challenged her more than she had expected. Throughout her rescue swimmer career and BUD/S training, she had usually been the subject matter expert in her operating environment. Now she needed to trust Peterson's judgment and contribute as a team member rather than a leader. The lesson proved valuable as the team moved through increasingly difficult terrain. Each member took leadership when situations favored their particular skills. Sullivan guided them through a close encounter with an opposing patrol, using his tactical knowledge to position the team where they could observe without being detected. Kane led them through a shooting problem that required precision marksmanship to neutralize sentries without alerting other defenders. By dawn of the second day, Sarah's team had reached their reconnaissance objective, a compound where they needed to gather intelligence on defensive positions, guard schedules, and facility layout. The information would be used to plan a direct action mission on the final day of the exercise. Rodriguez established the observation post, his small stature allowing him to create a concealed position that larger team members could not have occupied. Sarah contributed her experience with long-term surveillance from rescue operations, helping the team maintain alert watches while conserving energy for the upcoming assault phase. The reconnaissance phase tested patience and discipline as much as tactical skill. Teams had to remain hidden while gathering detailed intelligence over a 24-hour period. Sarah's team methodically recorded guard movements, identified key facilities, and planned their approach for the final assault. They worked with the systematic professionalism that had become their signature throughout training. Other teams struggled with various aspects of the exercise. 2 teams were captured during infiltration when they triggered detection systems. Another team became lost during overland movement and missed their reconnaissance window entirely. The attrition rate was higher than usual, reflecting the accumulated stress of 6 months of training and the complexity of the final evaluation. Sarah's team submitted their reconnaissance report on schedule with intelligence that impressed the evaluating instructors. They had identified vulnerabilities in the compound defenses that other teams missed and developed assault plans that maximized their chances of success while minimizing exposure to defender fire. Outstanding work, Lieutenant Commander Hayes commented after reviewing their submission. This is professional-level intelligence analysis. The final day brought the direct action mission. Sarah's team would assault the compound, eliminate specific targets, gather sensitive materials, and extract to a pickup point while avoiding or engaging defending forces. The exercise was designed to test everything they had learned about small unit tactics, marksmanship, teamwork, and decision-making under extreme stress. Sullivan took command for the assault phase, his tactical expertise making him the natural leader for the combat scenario. Sarah found herself assigned as the team medic and secondary assault element, roles that would test her shooting skills and medical training under pressure. The assault began before dawn with a synchronized attack that caught the defenders by surprise. Chen's communications equipment provided coordination between elements while Kane provided precision fire that neutralized key defensive positions. Sarah moved with the assault element, clearing buildings with techniques learned during months of close-quarters combat training. The first casualty occurred when Rodriguez was wounded by simulated enemy fire while clearing a communications facility. Sarah immediately moved to his position, providing medical treatment while under fire from defending instructors who were testing her ability to function as a combat medic. Sucking chest wound, possible pneumothorax, she called out while examining Rodriguez. "I need 2 minutes to stabilize him for movement." Sarah's medical procedures were textbook perfect, performed under simulated combat conditions that would have overwhelmed less experienced candidates. She treated Rodriguez's wounds, prepared him for evacuation, and returned to the assault within the timeframe needed to maintain mission momentum. The team completed their objectives successfully, gathering the required intelligence materials and eliminating all designated targets. Their extraction was flawless, with every team member reaching the pickup point within the specified time window. They had functioned as an integrated unit where individual expertise contributed to collective success. As the exercise concluded and candidates assembled for final evaluation, exhaustion mixed with anticipation in equal measures. 6 months of the most demanding training in the military had led to this moment. Sarah stood with her teammates, salt-stained and tired but confident that they had performed to the best of their abilities. Chief Williams addressed the assembled candidates with the gravity appropriate for the occasion. "Over the past 6 months, you have been tested in every way we know how to test people. Physical endurance, mental toughness, technical competence, and teamwork. Some of you have exceeded our expectations. All of you have earned the right to be here." He paused, looking at each candidate individually. The teams need operators who can function in any environment, under any conditions, as part of units where failure is not acceptable.
Based on your performance throughout training, we believe you possess these qualities. The graduation ceremony that followed was simple but profound. 38 candidates received their SEAL Trident pins, joining a brotherhood that included fewer than 3,000 active operators worldwide.
Sarah Martinez became the first woman to earn the pin in over 3 years, but, more importantly, she had proven herself worthy of the trust her teammates would place in her during operational missions. As she stood with her graduating class, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. They had thought fear would break her, but fear had never been her enemy. Self-doubt, physical limitations, and the pressure of being different had challenged her more than any evolution or instructor. She had discovered that belonging to the SEAL community was not about meeting someone else's definition of a warrior. It was about bringing unique strengths to a team that valued competence above all else. Her rescue swimmer background had provided capabilities that enhanced every team she joined. Her leadership style had proven effective in situations where traditional approaches failed. The whispers had stopped entirely now, replaced by genuine respect from peers and instructors who had seen her perform under pressure. She was no longer the woman trying to become a SEAL, she was a SEAL whose gender had become irrelevant to everyone except those who had never witnessed her capabilities. Marcus approached her after the ceremony, the friendship forged during Hell Week having deepened throughout training. "So what's next for the famous Sarah Martinez?" he asked with a grin that mixed pride with affection.
"Same thing as everyone else," Sarah replied.
"Advanced training, team assignment, and hopefully some missions where I can put all this training to good use." Her answer reflected the mindset that had carried her through 6 months of challenges. She was not interested in being a pioneer or symbol, just a professional operator who happened to be female. The teams would decide her value based on performance in operational environments where competence was the only measure that mattered. Chief Williams found her before she left the compound, his weathered face showing approval that he rarely expressed to graduating candidates.
"Martinez, you've got orders to SEAL Team 3.
They specifically requested you based on your water expertise and medical training."
The assignment was both an honor and a responsibility.
SEAL Team 3 had a reputation for difficult missions in maritime environments where Sarah's unique background would be invaluable. They had requested her not because she was a woman breaking barriers, but because her skills matched their operational requirements perfectly. As Sarah gathered her belongings and prepared to leave BUD/S behind, she understood that graduation was not an ending but a beginning. The real test would come in operational teams where training had to translate into mission success. She would need to prove herself again, not to skeptics but to teammates whose lives would depend on her competence. But she was ready for that challenge. 6 months of the most demanding training in the world had forged her into exactly the type of operator she had dreamed of becoming. Not the strongest or fastest or most aggressive, but someone who could be trusted to perform when everything went wrong. They had thought fear would break her, until they realized she was not driven by the need to overcome fear but by the quiet confidence that came from knowing her capabilities. Sarah Martinez was finally where she belonged, among warriors who valued competence above all else, ready to serve wherever her country needed her skills. The brass bell that had marked the end of so many dreams remained silent as she walked away, its voice no longer relevant to someone who had proven that belonging was earned through performance, not given through sympathy. She was a Navy SEAL, and that was the only identity that mattered now.